What if I told you that there is a moment every single day that most of us rush past, waste, or fall asleep inside of, yet that very moment has the power to reshape your heart, realign your life, and quietly transform who you become? A moment so small it fits between one breath and the next. A moment that doesn't require money, status, followers, or perfection. A moment that asks only for honesty. Tonight, before you close your eyes, before the world goes silent and the noise finally fades, there is something you can do that can change everything, not overnight in the way movies promise, but deeply, steadily, permanently. And the tragedy is not that it's difficult. The tragedy is that we forget it exists. We live our lives running from pain, running toward distraction, running through days like checkpoints rather than gifts. We wake up already tired, already anxious, already behind. We scroll to numb ourselves. We talk to everyone except the one who gave us breath. And then when night finally arrives, we collapse, physically exhausted, emotionally overwhelmed, spiritually starving. Sleep becomes an escape rather than a return. But what if sleep was not an escape? What if sleep was a surrender? There is a reason the night feels different. There is a reason the heart softens when the lights go off. There is a reason thoughts you buried all day suddenly rise when you lie down. Night strips you. It removes the costumes, the roles, the performance. You are no longer strong, successful, impressive, or in control. You are just you, fragile, human, dependent. And it is in that stripped down state that the heart becomes most receptive to truth. Before you sleep, your soul stands at a doorway, one foot in this world, one foot leaning toward the next. Sleep is a rehearsal for letting go. And what you do in that moment, what you think, what you hold on to, what you release, quietly trains your heart. Night after night, you are becoming someone. The question is, who? Most of us end the day carrying the weight of everything we didn't say, didn't do, didn't fix. Regrets pile up like unwashed dishes. Anger simmers. Guilt whispers. Fear tightens its grip. And we take all of that with us into sleep as if the heart were designed to hold poison overnight. Then we wake up wondering why peace feels so far away. Transformation does not begin with dramatic change. It begins with honest return. And that return is most powerful before sleep. Before you sleep, pause. Truly pause. Let the silence settle and ask yourself a question that most people are afraid to ask. Where was my heart today? Not what did I do? Not how productive was I? Not how did I appear to others? Where was my heart? Because you can pray and your heart can be absent. You can smile and your heart can be breaking. You can succeed and your heart can be starving. The heart is the compass. And if the compass is broken, no amount of movement will get you home. As you lie there, replay your day, not with judgment, but with awareness. Notice where your heart ran to for safety. Did it run to people? Did it run to approval? Did it run to control? Did it run to distraction? Did it run away from pain rather than through trust? We often think sins are only actions, but attachment can be a sin of the heart. Reliance can be misplaced. Love can be misdirected. And none of that is healed by ignoring it. Healing begins by seeing. There is something profoundly liberating about naming the truth in the presence of mercy. You don't have to fix yourself tonight. You don't have to promise perfection. You just have to stop pretending. Before you sleep, speak to the one who already knows, not in polished phrases, not in borrowed words. Speak as you are. Broken if you are broken. Angry if you are angry. Confused if you are confused. He is not scandalized by your honesty. He is waiting for it. Tell him where you failed today, not as a self-condemning list, but as a child returning home. Tell him where you were weak, where you were afraid, where you chose comfort over truth, where you chose people over principle, where you forgot him, not because he left, but because you turned away. There is a difference between guilt that poisons and remorse that purifies. Poison says, you are hopeless. Purification says, you are human and mercy is bigger. Before you sleep, choose purification. Then, and this is where transformation begins, release what was never yours to carry. We exhaust ourselves trying to control outcomes that were never placed in our hands. We replay conversations we can't change. We fear futures we can't predict. We cling to people we can't save. And then we wonder why our chests feel tight and our prayers feel heavy. Before you sleep, say the words that loosen the grip of the heart. I return it to you. Return the people you love. Return the people who hurt you. Return the plans you're afraid will fail. Return the dreams you're afraid to hope for. Return the version of yourself you're trying to become. Surrender is not weakness. It is clarity. It is the moment the heart remembers its proper place. You were never meant to be the source. You were meant to be the servant. And servants rest best when they trust the master. As you lie there, place your hand over your heart. Feel its rhythm. That beating is not self-sustained. It is a gift renewed every second. And if your heart depends on him to beat, why do you think your life does not depend on him to unfold? Before you sleep, forgive. This may be the hardest part. Not because forgiveness is unjust, but because bitterness feels like protection. We think holding onto pain keeps us safe, but bitterness is a prison where the offender walks free and the wounded stays locked inside. Forgiveness does not mean what happened was acceptable. It means you refuse to let the injury define your future. Forgiveness is an act of trust, not in people, but in divine justice. Say it even if you don't feel it yet. Say it because obedience sometimes precedes emotion. Say it because hearts soften through action. And if you are the one who needs forgiveness from yourself, begin there. Many people carry more mercy for others than they do for themselves. They punish themselves endlessly, as if self-hatred were a form of repentance. It is not. It is a form of despair. Before you sleep, allow mercy to reach you. You are not purified by self-loathing. You are purified by return. Now, turn your attention to gratitude, not the shallow kind that ignores pain, but the deep kind that recognizes provision even in difficulty. List what went right today, even if the list feels small. Especially if it feels small. Gratitude trains the heart to see light without denying darkness. It shifts focus from what is missing to what is given. Every day you are breathing is evidence that you are still needed. Every night you are forgiven is evidence that you are still loved. Before you sleep, anchor your heart in remembrance. Remembrance is not repetition without presence. It is awareness. It is letting truth sink beneath the noise. When you remember, you realign. When you realign, peace follows, not because life becomes easy, but because the heart becomes rooted. The last thoughts you carry into sleep matter. They are seeds planted in the subconscious. They shape how you wake, how you respond, how you believe. Do not fall asleep scrolling through other people's lives and calling it rest. Do not fall asleep rehearsing fears and calling it realism. Do not fall asleep numb and call it peace. Fall asleep in trust. Tell your soul, you are safe, you are held, you are not alone. Because when you sleep with trust, you wake with strength. And when you repeat this night after night, something changes quietly. You become less reactive, less desperate, less afraid of loss, more anchored, more present, more whole. Life doesn't transform because circumstances suddenly align. Life transforms because the heart learns where to rest. And this practice, this return before sleep, does something else that is easy to overlook. It builds sincerity. It strips the ego. It reminds you that at the end of every day, you are not what you achieved. You are what you surrendered. Night after night, you train your heart to let go. And a heart that knows how to let go is a heart that knows how to love without fear. Because fear comes from attachment. And attachment comes from forgetting the source. You don't need to overhaul your life tonight. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to show up honestly, humbly, consistently. Transformation is not loud. It is quiet. It happens in the unseen moments, in the whispered prayers, in the tears no one witnesses, in the nights when you choose return over escape. And one day, you will wake up and realize something has shifted. The same problems exist, but they don't own you. The same fears arise, but they don't rule you. The same losses occur, but they don't destroy you. Because the heart that learned how to surrender at night learned how to stand firm during the day. So tonight, before you sleep, don't just close your eyes, open your heart, let go of the weight, speak the truth, forgive, return. Remember, and let sleep find you not as someone running from life, but as someone resting in trust. Most people think of night as an ending, as the moment when the day finally releases its grip and the body shuts down. But the night is not merely an absence of light, it is a threshold. It is a quiet turning point where the soul stands more exposed than at any other time. When the noise of the world fades, the heart is no longer distracted by performance or survival. The titles fall away, the expectations loosen. What remains is the truth of who you are when no one is watching. This is why the night carries a different weight, a different tenderness. It is not accidental. It is an invitation. Throughout the day, we are armored. We respond, react, defend, and distract. We rush from one demand to another, rarely stopping long enough to feel what is happening inside. The heart learns to hide in daylight. But at night, there is nowhere left to run. The thoughts you pushed aside return. The emotions you postponed ask to be acknowledged. The soul finally has room to speak. This is why sleep often feels heavy for those who are spiritually neglected and light for those who are spiritually grounded. The difference is not in the mattress, but in what the heart is carrying. The sacredness of this moment lies in its honesty. Before sleep, the illusions of control weaken. You are reminded, whether you like it or not, of your dependence. You cannot guarantee waking up. You cannot protect yourself while unconscious. You surrender every night, even if you do not name it as surrender, and in that forced humility, there is profound spiritual potential. When the heart recognizes its fragility, it becomes more receptive to truth, more open to guidance, more willing to let go of false sources of security. What happens when we ignore this moment is subtle but devastating. We carry the day's chaos straight into sleep. We anesthetize ourselves with screens, noise, or exhaustion, never allowing the soul to process, return, or heal. Over time, this neglect accumulates. The heart hardens not out of arrogance, but out of unaddressed fatigue. Nights become empty and days become reactive. But when the night is reclaimed, everything begins to shift. Using the night intentionally transforms it from an escape into a meeting. It becomes a space of return rather than collapse. Even a few moments of awareness before sleep can realign the heart. This is not about adding pressure or ritualizing the night into another obligation. It is about recognizing that this moment already carries weight, already shapes the inner world, whether we engage it consciously or not. Night after night, the way you enter sleep trains your soul. It teaches the heart where safety lies, where peace comes from, and what truly matters when all else is stripped away. Over time, this sacred turning point becomes a quiet anchor in your life, steadying you not by changing the world around you, but by changing the place within you where the world lands. Most of us move through life evaluating ourselves by what we do, how much we accomplish, and how others perceive us. We measure days by productivity and worth by output. But the heart lives on a different scale. It is not impressed by how busy you were or how much you achieved. It is shaped by what it clung to, what it feared, and where it sought safety. This is why real transformation does not begin by asking what you did today, but by asking where your heart went today. When you ask this question honestly, it shifts the entire lens through which you see your life. you begin to notice that the heart is always in motion, always leaning toward something for comfort, validation, or control. Sometimes it leans toward people, hoping they will fill a void only the divine can fill. Sometimes it leans toward achievements, mistaking success for security. Sometimes it leans toward distractions, numbing pain rather than healing it. These movements are often invisible because they are internal, but they shape your spiritual state more than any external action. Taking inventory of the heart requires gentleness. This is not an exercise in self-accusation or despair. Harsh judgment closes the heart, while compassionate awareness opens it. The goal is not to condemn yourself for every misstep, but to recognize patterns of attachment and forgetfulness. When you see where the heart wandered, you gain the ability to guide it back. Awareness is not the end of the journey. It is the door. Honest return begins when you stop pretending. Many people speak to God in ways they think sound appropriate, while hiding what they actually feel. But sincerity does not require eloquence. It requires truth. Returning means admitting where you were weak, where you chose comfort over conscience, where fear guided your decisions more than trust. This kind of honesty is not disrespectful. It is deeply reverent. It acknowledges divine knowledge and mercy rather than trying to impress. There is a difference between feeling ashamed of being imperfect and feeling humbled by your need for guidance. Shame isolates, while humility reconnects. When you bring your flaws into the light of mercy, they lose their power to define you. The heart softens not because it is flawless, but because it is seen and still accepted. This is how return heals rather than wounds. Over time, this daily heart inventory reshapes your spiritual awareness. You begin to catch yourself sooner when your heart starts drifting. You recognize the early signs of misplaced reliance or emotional imbalance. Instead of reacting blindly, you respond consciously. The heart becomes familiar territory rather than a neglected space. You learn its language, its fears, its longings. This practice also nurtures sincerity. You stop performing goodness and start seeking truth. You stop chasing appearances and start prioritizing alignment. The more consistently you ask where your heart was, the more naturally it learns where it belongs. Return becomes less dramatic and more instinctive. The heart no longer feels lost in moments of weakness because it knows the way back, and that knowledge itself becomes a source of peace. One of the greatest sources of exhaustion in the human heart is the silent belief that everything depends on us. We carry responsibilities that were never assigned to us, replay outcomes we cannot change, and attempt to manage futures that are not yet written. This illusion of control does not come from strength. It comes from fear, fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of being hurt again. And because fear feels unsafe, the heart grips tighter, thinking that holding on will protect it, when in reality, it is the very thing suffocating it. From an early age, we are taught to strive, to plan, to anticipate, and to prevent pain. Effort has its place, but there is a line where effort turns into obsession and responsibility turns into burden. When that line is crossed, the heart forgets its role. It forgets that outcomes are not its assignment. The heart is meant to trust, to strive with integrity, and then to release. Without release, even the most faithful effort becomes heavy. Surrender is often misunderstood as passivity or weakness, but true surrender is neither. It is the clear recognition of boundaries. It is knowing where your responsibility ends and where divine wisdom begins. When you say, I return it, you are not giving up. You are placing things back where they belong. You are acknowledging that some matters are too vast, too complex, and too interconnected to be carried by a limited heart. There is a profound lightness that comes with this kind of release. When you stop trying to control people, you free yourself from constant disappointment. When you stop obsessing over outcomes, you free yourself from chronic anxiety. When you stop replaying the past, You allow the present to breathe. Letting go does not erase pain, but it removes the additional suffering created by resistance. The heart is no longer clenched, it becomes open and resilient. Returning what was never yours to carry also reorders love. When people become a source of safety, their absence feels like devastation. When success becomes the source of worth, failure feels like annihilation. But when the heart places ultimate reliance where it belongs, everything else finds its proper size. Love becomes deep but not desperate. Effort becomes sincere but not consuming. Loss becomes painful but not defining. This act of surrender is not a single dramatic moment. It is a repeated practice. The heart forgets easily. Each day presents new reasons to grasp, to worry, to overfunction. This is why return must be continual. Each time you consciously release, you retrain the heart. You teach it that safety does not come from control and peace does not come from certainty. Over time, this practice transforms how you move through life. You still plan, but you are not paralyzed when plans change. You still love, but you are not destroyed when people fail you. You still strive, but your worth is no longer tied to results. The heart becomes spacious rather than burdened. Life is no longer a test of how tightly you can hold on, but a journey of how faithfully you can place things back into hands far more capable than your own. Forgiveness is often spoken about as a virtue, but rarely acknowledged as a form of survival for the heart. When pain is left unresolved, it does not disappear, it settles. It embeds itself into the inner world, quietly shaping perception, reactions, and relationships. Many people believe that holding on to anger keeps them safe, that remembering the wound will prevent it from happening again. But what actually happens is that the heart remains trapped in the moment of injury, reliving it long after the event has passed. Bitterness has a convincing voice. It tells you that releasing pain means excusing injustice, that forgiveness is a betrayal of your own suffering. But forgiveness is not denial. It does not rewrite history or minimize harm. It simply refuses to allow the wound to become the center of your identity. When the heart clings to resentment, it hands control to the very thing that caused it pain. Forgiveness takes that power back. There is also a quiet exhaustion that comes from constantly carrying unresolved hurt. The mind replays conversations, imagines different endings, and rehearses defenses that may never be needed again. This constant vigilance drains emotional energy and narrows the heart's capacity for joy. Forgiveness interrupts this cycle. It does not erase memory, but it softens its grip. The heart is no longer braced for impact. It begins to breathe again. Forgiving others requires trust, not in people, but in justice beyond human limitation. It is an acknowledgement that not every wrong will be righted in this life, and that ultimate accountability does not rest in your hands. This trust does not weaken the heart, it strengthens it. It allows you to move forward without carrying the burden of vengeance. Peace becomes possible not because everything was fair, but because the heart is no longer fighting a battle it was never meant to win. Yet often, the most difficult forgiveness is directed inward. Many people are merciless toward themselves. They replay past mistakes with relentless cruelty, as if self-punishment could somehow undo what has already happened. This kind of internal harshness masquerades as responsibility, but it is rooted in despair. It assumes that mercy is reserved for others, not for oneself. Over time, this erodes self-worth and blocks spiritual growth. Self-forgiveness begins with acknowledging imperfection as part of the human condition. Growth does not require self-hatred, it requires honesty and resolve. When the heart is given permission to be flawed without being condemned, it becomes more receptive to change. Mercy does not excuse wrongdoing, it creates the environment in which transformation can occur. Forgiveness, whether directed outward or inward, is an act of release. It loosens the chains that bind the heart to past pain. It does not promise that you will never feel hurt again, but it ensures that hurt will not define you. Each time you choose forgiveness, you reclaim a piece of your inner freedom. The heart becomes lighter, not because the world became kinder, but because it no longer carries the weight of unresolved wounds into every new moment of life. The moments before sleep are not empty or insignificant, they are formative. They shape the inner landscape in ways that are often unnoticed, but deeply enduring. When the body lies still and the mind begins to quiet, the heart becomes more impressionable. The final thoughts of the day sink deeper than we realize, settling into the subconscious and influencing how we wake, how we respond, and how we interpret the world. This is why ending the day in remembrance and trust is not a small act, but a powerful one. Many people fall asleep mentally overstimulated, emotionally unresolved, or spiritually disconnected. Screens replace silence, noise replaces reflection, and distraction replaces peace. This does not give the heart rest, it merely delays its reckoning. When the mind is crowded with fear, comparison, or regret at night, those emotions do not disappear with sleep. They are carried into the next day, quietly shaping mood and perspective. Over time, this accumulation hardens the heart and dulls spiritual sensitivity. Remembrance before sleep serves as a realignment. It pulls the heart back to what is constant when everything else feels unstable. It is not about repeating words without presence, but about allowing truth to settle deeply. When the heart remembers the source of its existence and care, anxieties shrink to their proper size. Problems remain, but they no longer feel overwhelming. The heart is reminded that it is not alone, not abandoned, and not responsible for carrying the weight of the world. Trust is the natural outcome of genuine remembrance. When you remember consistently, reliance shifts. You stop anchoring your sense of safety in circumstances, people, or outcomes. Instead, safety becomes rooted in something unchanging. This does not eliminate effort or responsibility, but it removes desperation. You can strive without panic and wait without despair. The heart learns that uncertainty does not equal danger. Gratitude plays a vital role in this nightly anchoring. Not a forced optimism that denies pain, but a grounded recognition of provision despite hardship. Gratitude softens the heart and widens perspective. It allows you to acknowledge what was difficult without letting it eclipse what was given. Even on the hardest days, there are signs of care if the heart is trained to look for them. This practice gradually shifts focus from lack to sufficiency. Ending the day in trust also prepares the heart for surrender. Sleep itself is an act of letting go. You relinquish awareness, control, and defense. When trust precedes sleep, this surrender becomes peaceful rather than fearful. The heart rests not because everything is resolved, but because it has been placed in reliable care. This kind of rest restores more than the body, it renews the spirit. Over time, consistently closing the day with remembrance and trust reshapes the inner world. You wake with more clarity, more patience, and more resilience. The heart becomes less reactive because it is regularly grounded. Life does not lose its challenges, but they lose their power to destabilize you. Night after night, this practice plants quiet seeds of stability and sincerity.